Greetings ladies and gentlefish, and welcome to this review of the Tier 6 Soviet light tank, the MT-25. Now usually I kick off these reviews with a little bit of history behind the vehicle, but frankly I don't really know anything more about this tank than you would find in the in-game description. And basically the in-game description just says, well, it was a design that was the draft of which was completed during the mid-Second World War, 1943, mid to late I guess. Never entered production. I can, however, give you a bit of context about this machine in the game. So for those of you who don't remember, I can remember back when all this here were fields, and when, certainly when I started playing, with the exception of the French, the highest tier light tank in the game was tier 5. So before the introduction of the French tech tree, the highest tier light tanks were the M-24 Chaffee for the Americans, which was tier 5, the VK-2801, which was the tier 5 light tank for the Germans. You had the T-50-2, which was the tier 5 light tank for the Soviets. You didn't have the Chinese, French, Japanese, or Brits. So it was only those three nations in the game. Then the French come along and they give the French light tanks up to tier 8. You have the AMX series of tanks culminating in the AMX 1390 at tier 8. But all of the other nations still had light tanks only up to tier 5. Then they introduced the Chinese tech tree, and again they gave them light tanks up to... Sorry, I should point out the British came out in between, but the British don't have high tier light tanks, and they still don't have high tier light tanks. So let's not pay any attention to them. The Chinese they introduced, and they again have light tanks up to tier 8, and eventually there was a light tank rebalance a few patches ago now, I can't remember exactly how long. And they changed a few things around. And the sort of things they did, well, for example, the German tech tree, they bumped a bunch of tanks up a tier, so the VK-2801 became tier 6. They added the Aufklärungspanzerpanther at tier 7, and then sometime later they added the RU-251 at tier 8. If you look at the Americans, they radically changed the Chaffee, which was still tier 5. They introduced, and the old Chaffee, I would like to point out, was a tier 5 light tank that got brutal matchmaking for a very long time. Not that long ago, the Chaffee used to have the bobblehead that you see on the T-37 light tank, and it used to be a tier 5 tank that saw tier 7 games at best and tier 10 games at worst. The matchmaking was brutal, but it was a very fun little tank. Anyway, I digress. They introduced the T-37 at tier 6, the M41 Walker Bulldog at tier 7, and then the T-49 at tier 8. So you have light tanks up to tier 8, and with the Soviets, well, the Soviets don't really have a light tank line, really. They removed completely the T-50-2. That was a light tank that didn't really obey the laws of physics or anything. It just floated around the battlefield at 70 kilometers an hour, pew-pewing whatever it felt like. It was I never got to play it. I didn't unlock it in time before they removed it. But from all accounts that I've heard, it was an incredibly fun machine to play, but if we're going to be brutally honest, it was probably too fun. And they basically replaced it with this and moved it up a tier. So, the MT-25 got compared, because it was the direct replacement to, got compared a lot to the T-50-2. Now, bearing in mind, the T-50-2 was a very unrealistic, graceful ballerina that just moved across any sort of terrain as if it were hovering. The MT-25 was very much not that. Now, since they introduced it, this tank has received a couple of buffs, actually. But basically, people were disappointed with this tank because while it was fast in a straight line, it was a tier higher for starters. It was nowhere near as manoeuvrable, and it didn't look as good. I mean, the old T-50-2 was slim, it was sleek, it looked elegant. This thing is squat, fat, and looks pretty ugly, if I'm going to be honest. Anyway, a little bit of in-game context for you. So what is it that you actually... And sorry, perhaps I should say, as a result of that, the fact that it replaced the T-50-2, or at least partly as a result of that, lots of people don't like this tank, because it replaced the thing that they loved. They had a lot of fun in the T-50-2, and then they introduced this, it replaced it, it wasn't as fun. A lot of people don't like it. Is there any justification to that? Well, hopefully we'll go through that in this review. Anyway, what is it you actually get in game? So I said this is a tier 6 light tank. You get 570 hit points. Let's just think about that for a second. That is... a tier 5 medium tank gets about 450. Okay, fair enough. A tier 6 medium tank gets about 750. Okay, bearing in mind, being a light tank, tier 6, this tank gets scout matchmaking. So it sees tier 7 games up to tier 9 games. Now let's put that 570 hit points into context. Soviet and Chinese 122mm guns will shave off 390 of that with every hit. So that's 2 shots and you're dead. Okay. Howitzers, if they penetrate you, will often shave off most of that or possibly all of it with 1 hit. A KV-2 will wreck you if it hits you. You just die. Artillery, you just die. So realistically, this 570 hit points is a hit until you're dead. You know, maybe you can survive 1 hit, and then that's it. If we compare it to some another tier 6 light tank, or a couple of others, we've got the T-37, which gets 680 hit points. T-21, 600. So it's closer in hit points to the T-21 than it is to the T-37. What about the Type 64, 580, 5916, 550, bearing in mind that's with the stock turret? So, really, despite the fact that this thing's quite fat, 570 hit points is very much towards the bottom end of things. Doesn't have much health. 25-ton machine, 700 horsepower engine, which gives this thing a power-to-weight ratio of 27 horsepower per ton, which is a lot, however you measure it. This thing moves 72 an hour, 72 kilometer an hour top speed limit. It will do that. Going downhill, it will do more than that. 48 degree a second traverse speed is good. To go with the 48 degree a second turret traverse is good. This thing, you know, can move. That's grand. The armor, I'm not going to talk about the armor in any detail because this is a light tank. All you need to know is that 45 at the front, and that is sloped. 40 at the sides, 40 at the rear, and 45 all round on the turret is generally enough to not be penetrated by most HE rounds that will be pointing at you. Don't expect to bounce anything else. Regular AP is going to shred you. But with any luck, HE rounds that hit you won't kill you straight off. Talk a bit more about the gun in just a moment. 370 meter view range is okay, but it's nothing to really get excited about, and 730 meter signal range is fine. Who really cares, if we're going to be brutally honest? So, just from those basic stats, you get the idea of a machine that's very fast, not well armoured, but let's be honest, it's a light tank. Big engine, again, very fast, accelerates well, manoeuvres well, but can't take many hits, even for a light tank of its tier. Alright, what about the gun? Well, there's a whole bunch of different guns here. 4 of them, I can count to 4, but really there's one you're going to be using. And this is a gun that's going to be very, very familiar to you. I mean, having played almost any Soviet tank at mid-tiers, it's the 57mm ZIS-4. This is basically the same gun you use on the 5916, the Chinese tier 6 light tank. It's the same gun you used on the T-28, T-34, A-43, A-44, or you could have used on those last 2 machines. And to all intents and purposes, there's a difference in name, but it's the same gun as the 57mm you get on the KV-1. 57mm gun, which is puny for its tier, so this is a very low caliber weapon. 25 rounds a minute rate of fire. Holy crap. That's just over 2 seconds between shots. That's a lot. 112 average penetration is not a lot, however. I mean, people sometimes say that the T-21 gets an underwhelming gun, and that gets 128mm of penetration on average. T-37, 150. This is the lowest... oh, okay, caveat. This is the lowest penetration to be found on any tier 6 light tank that does not get a big fat howitzer as an option, because technically you could use the 75mm gun on the VK. I don't know why you would, but you could, and that has 110 pen, but whatever. 85 average damage is also not very much. The penetration does go up with APCR to almost 190 though, which is nice. Still 85 average damage, and being a very low caliber gun, the high explosive round out of this weapon is utter garbage. Don't ever bother with this, you are completely wasting your time. Dispersion at 100 meters of 0.34 is actually pretty good. Aim time of 2.1 seconds. Now, What you find in practice, especially with moving around, especially with just things happening, moving the turret and whatnot, in the vast majority of situations, and in practice, this gun loads faster than it fires. And so what that means is that if you want to use that full rate of fire, you have to take those shots with your gun not fully aimed. If you want your gun to be fully aimed, you have to not use the full rate of fire. Practical reality of that is that you only get to use that full rate of fire when you are at close range, basically. So that's the gun on this thing. What about the research path? Now, it's a little bit weird because the Soviets no longer really have a light tank line. They have a lot of low tier light tanks. As you can see, there's tons of these little things. But what you used to have is the T50 here at tier 4 and then the T50-2 led on from that at tier 5, but they moved the MT-25 up a tier and they didn't introduce a tier 5 light tank, so there's this kind of gap. I unlocked the MT-25 from the old KV-1S that used to be sitting here at tier 6, where the KV-85 now is. That is no longer an option for you, so instead you get to go through the T-34. Now, if you've seen any of my Soviet tank reviews that lead on from the T-34, you've got the same options of getting up to that tank. I'm not going to go through them again because 1, 2, 3 different lines to get to the T-34, pick one. Doesn't really matter which one you go for. And then you move on to the MT-25. In the case of the MT-25, I would perhaps say that this might be your better option going via the T-50, simply because the T-50 does get shoved into... does get scout matchmaking. So, it will get the same... you will experience being in a game where other tanks are 3 tiers higher than you, and you'll experience that before having played the MT-25, so it will give you a flavour for that sort of thing. You get to the MT-25, and what are you faced with? Well, the top gun here you unlocked with the T-34, but you don't have the turret to use it. So what do you use? Well, you have an option of this 37mm autocannon, basically, which is used on a bunch of lower tier tanks and you can already have unlocked, but have you seen these penetration values? They are trash. I do not recommend that gun. This stock gun, oh my god, it's a tier 2 stock gun that should have you quaking in your custom-made baby seal leather boots. This 45mm stock gun is utter garbage. I mean, this is the gun you get on the Valentine 2, and that thing is only ever top tier, just to put it into some sort of context, because the gun is garbage. You really don't want to be using this gun if you possibly can avoid it. So your interim gun, in my opinion, becomes this, the 45mm VT-43. If you went via either the T-50 or the T-80, so there's another reason to play the T-50, you will already have this gun unlocked. And so you can use this. If you did not go via either of those, I would strongly recommend splashing 1100 free XP to unlock this gun, just to make this thing vaguely playable. And even then, you are probably going to be spamming quite a lot of APCR with that 110 penetration with APCR, only 75 with regular AP, and again, the HE round is utter garbage. So the gun situation is not brilliant. The radio situation, well, frankly, who really cares? But if this is the first Soviet line you've gone down, this will be the first tank on which you unlock that radio. Top engine is used on this tank and the next one, so you're not going to have that already unlocked. Middle engine is used on this one, and the S51 artillery piece, so you're probably not going to have that unlocked, and so you're going to be lumbered with this 500 horsepower engine, which is a bit sad. So the MT-25 stock is quite a sad little machine, if I'm going to be honest. You might want to splash some free XP on some of the modules, or you might want to not. I mean, it's kind of up to you, but if you don't, it's probably going to be quite a painful experience playing this thing stock. So the grind is not the best, but I mean, I probably should just quickly mention where it leads on to. From here you get to the LTTB, which I haven't played, but from what I've heard is quite a decent machine, and the T-54 lightweight, and this is kind of the tier 8 light tank for the Soviets, and then you can get to the T-54 if that's the route you want to use. And then the T62A or the Object 140. So, you know, that's where you're going from this. So that's the grind, and as I say, it's kind of painful. What about things like crew skills and equipment? Well, don't pay too much attention to these crew skills. I'm not quite sure why they've got them. I think some of this crew I grabbed from some kind of strange places, and they might have already been trained onto a different machine. I would recommend Sixth Sense on your commander, because Sixth Sense, just always Sixth Sense. You might want to go with preventative maintenance on your driver, because this thing does set on fire quite a lot and your engine gets hit quite a lot. But frankly, if you've got a fire extinguisher, you're not going to survive 2 fires anyway, so probably not. Sixth Sense, camo on everybody else, would be my advice for this machine. This thing lives or dies by being fast and or being spotted. Consumable slot, this thing does catch fire, and so it depends how much of a risk you want to take. But you do not want to give up the repair kit. You're not going to be getting shot at a lot, so the repair kit is mainly to put your tracks back on. You might want to ditch the first aid kit, although if your driver gets taken out, that will also make you very sad. But I mean, you do have the option, if you so wish, of packing extra combat rations and or Lend-Lease oil to try and get either a bit more out of the engine, or I guess a removed speed governor, but that's risky, to try and get a bit more out of the engine, or to try and get a bit more performance out of the machine in general. But they are relatively expensive options, and you certainly don't have to do that. You can see I've just got your regular 3 consumables here. Equipment. Well, this thing can't mount a gun rammer. So what do you mount? Toolbox, no. Fill tanks with CO2, I think it's a waste and it's expensive. Enhanced gun laying drive, well, the gun does fire faster than it aims, but I can't really recommend it. Cyclone filter, you might want a more durable engine. That is an option. Coated optics are an option, it's a light tank. Binocular telescopes, ditto. Wet ammo rack, don't bother. Enhanced torsion bars, you might want more durable suspension. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but that's up to you. Camo nut's definitely an option. Light spool liner, don't bother. Improved vents are an option. My recommendation would probably be vents, all-round improvement, binos and optics. This thing is very much the pure scout of the tier 6 light tanks. It is much less a damage dealer. I mean, if you look at my stats in this thing, to give you an example, I have 2 marks of excellence. The marks of excellence are calculated, if you don't already know, upon how much damage and assistance damage you do relative to everybody else who plays this tank. And it's calculated over the last 2 weeks. 2 marks of excellence is pretty good, but if you look at the stats in this vehicle, my damage ratio is less than 1, i.e. in this tank I took more damage than I dealt out. So the only way that I managed to get 2 marks of excellence and still take more damage than I deal out is because most of the damage I got towards those marks of excellence was spotting damage, was assistance damage. So as I say, this is very much the dedicated scout of the tier 6 light tanks. And in opposition to that, you kind of have the T-37, which has a relatively good gun. And of course the AMX, which has got the autoloader. Anyway, that was crew skills, equipment, consumables. Just a quick note, I found this machine, I found it hard to like when I first started playing it. I mean, it's even when you've got it fully upgraded, it's fast, but the gun is puny. Its gun depression is atrocious. It's a go-kart, basically. It's a go-kart with a little pop gun stuck on the front of it. And yeah, I wasn't a massive fan of it when I started playing it. I played it a bit more, and eventually I came to maybe not like it, but grudgingly respect it, I guess. It does have qualities. It's not perfect, but it does have qualities. Anyway, I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. I'm not going to give a detailed rundown of the armour, because this is a fast light tank. The armour's terrible. There's absolutely no point. So, we'll go and have a quick look at some gameplay, and then I'll round things off after that. So here is game number 1. This is a tier 9 game, which is the worst matchmaking the MT-25 sees. We're here on Fiery Salient. It's an encounter game. Or Prokhorovka, whatever you want to call this map, same difference. And I'm platooned up with Craig, also in his MT-25, but you're not going to see very much of him in this game. So, what to do in a light tank on this map. You've probably seen loads of replays if you followed this channel for any period of time where I spawn in the north, get an encounter game on this map, and tend to go to about the same bush location at about E9, on kind of the rise of that hill. Well, this is the south spawn, not the north spawn, so what are we going to do instead? Well, I was kind of toying around with a few ideas, and I eventually decide to try and spot the middle. Alas, Craig's being a little more aggressive than I am. And actually that means they act as a distraction, but no, I still can't shoot them because the MT-25 gets horrible gun depression. Oh well, never mind. Alright, so T-49, T-69 and an M41 Bulldog. All of those tanks can rip me apart. I have a relatively puny gun, so we really are the small man here. Now, we don't have that much that's gone up onto the hill, which is a little bit worrisome. There is just a tank destroyer up there, and we've just lost our T-49 as the Bulldog pumps shot after shot into him, probably killing him with the auto-loading gun, I would imagine, as of patch 9.6. The auto-loading gun seems to be the favoured weapon on that machine. So, just trying to run along that ridgeline and see if I can get any spots. Desperately trying to not get shot. But there we go, what can you do? The MT-25 is quite a large machine at the end of the day. And so I ended up taking about 370, 380 damage. So at a guess, I would say that that shot was from an SU-152 using a 122mm gun, or a Tortoise, or the Foch using the 120mm gun. They are my best guesses. So I just decided to come back over here to the other side of the map, because I don't want to get shot again. Again, terrible gun depression, can't get shots on anyone. You just have to be a little bit patient, a little bit cautious when you get situations like this. Oh, and there goes our WZ-131 as the T-49 obliterates him. You can't push the pace of the fight too much because you're small, your gun is puny, you have very little health, you have no armour, etc, etc. I mean small in the figurative sense, not in the literal sense. I mean, you're not huge, but for a light tank you're not tiny. So, STA-1 away in the distance. I don't have Sixth Sense on this machine at the time, in fact, since. One shot into the STA, replay bug, second shot misses. Put a shot into the 1375. Another shot into the STA. And finish the STA off. Oh, bad shot, bad shots. And side of a Foch. Nope. Don't have his side anymore, and I'm never gonna... I could try and pick those weak spots out, but it'll be difficult. Oh, but he gives me his side again, which is nice. So I will probably just plough a few more shots into that area. And then run away before I get spotted. So I managed to do all that shooting without having anyone fire back. I don't think I was spotted throughout the course of those engagements. As I say, I don't have Sixth Sense, so I can't actually verify that. But either way, I don't want to pop up in the same place twice. That's just begging for someone to be pre-aimed there and for someone to shoot you. There's the 1375, and I take a shot from the hill. Okay, there are people on the hill. This doesn't come as a massive surprise, but we hadn't previously spotted them, so we didn't explicitly know this. Now, that was a relatively small shot, so maybe it's the Challenger up there. That's my best guess. Challenger or the Centurion would be my best guesses for who is up there. So, move forward into this bush, and there's the Foch. Oh, he takes a big old hit. We ammo rack him for kill number 2. Kill number 3 to polish off the T-49, and then we run away so that we don't get shot again. So far we've killed 3 tanks, 2 tier 8s, and a tier 9. Which is nice. I mean, we've actually had a fairly decent game so far. Oh, just lost our IS. Object 704, I don't think I can penetrate him. Even if I have shots into his side, I don't think this gun will penetrate. But I'd give it a go anyway. It's not as if the ammunition's particularly expensive. You can see here, though, that the gun, in practice, reloads faster than it aims. So if you want to make the most of that reload time, you just have to hold the mouse button down, which means you won't be especially accurate, so you can only really do it at close range. At longer distances, you kind of need to let the gun aim a bit more. If you let the gun aim, it's quite accurate. If you don't, it's not. Which actually sounds like it's stating the obvious, but never mind. Scoreline is 6-6. This game is actually turning into quite a close run affair. There's the WZ, 111, and looks like I have shots into his side. Oh, that one went into his turret. And the side armour of the WZ is alright, but it's not fantastic. Put another couple of shots in there and try and back off so that I don't get shot myself. There's that 704. There's the AMX 1375. And, oh look, there's a Challenger on the hill. Called it. And it's worth just looking at how much health you take when you do get hit and judging from that who it is, who is away in the distance. Tortoise is over there. Really want this guy dead. So we move forward into a bush and turn on the binocular telescopes. But no, we can't see the guy. Damn it. And I'm not pulling the trigger here. I mean, I wouldn't damage the WZ even if I did, but I'm not pulling the trigger here because I don't want to get spotted. Again, I'm not going to penetrate the side of an E75 with 112? 112 millimeters of penetration. Just not happening. Move forward a bit more in an effort to try and spot that Tortoise again. Oh, there's the Centurion. So it was definitely not the Centurion who shot me from the hill earlier on. Now, you could argue these shots are a little bit risky, but I'm taking them anyway, so nah. That one bounces. I mean, these are actually not guaranteed penetrations by any stretch of the imagination, but there's a second penetration. I'm pretty confident that I'm in a position where I won't have been spotted. Apparently I was wrong. I thought I was more covered by bush there than I actually was. Anyway, I don't hang around to see the eventual outcome of that game. If memory serves, we win. We pick up 3 kills. We get, is it an Oskins medal or something? A medal for killing so many enemy tanks who are 2 tiers higher. Remember, we got 3 kills. 2 of them were tier 8. 1 of them was tier 9, and we were tier 6. So that was nice. And actually racked up quite a nice amount of spotting damage. You'll notice that Tortoise at the end was on quite low health. All of that tasty health was from our spotting, so that was nice. So yeah, that was just kind of the MT-25 doing the sort of light tank thing. The next game is going to be very different. Take a look at the post-battle results, and then of course we'll get into it. Alright, so here's game number 2. This is a tier 8 game, so the matchmaking's a little bit nicer, but the map is not as friendly. We were previously, of course, on Prokhorovka, Fiery Salient, whatever you want to call it, which is a very nice map for light tanks and artillery. There's a lot of places from which you can do spotting, and there's a lot of space to manoeuvre. This map is, I can't even remember what it's called, South Coast, and it's rather less friendly for light tanks. I must confess, I don't actually feel very comfortable on this map in pretty much any machine. So I'm very much still learning this map. I don't really know properly what to do on it. I mean, there aren't any proper locations from which you can move forward and do some spotting. If you run down to sort of F6, especially in a light tank like this, you're probably just going to get your backside handed to you by the enemy lights and mediums. And tank destroyers, it's just all a bit messy. So Instead, I'm going to actually try and play damage support in the first instance. That Cheeto backs off annoyingly. And this game in general is actually going to be way more about doing damage than it is spotting. In fact, I don't really do any spotting at all. It's also going to be about using the best thing about this tank. It's mobility. It's a very fast little machine. So, I mean, that position's it's just not very good. I'm not achieving anything there. There's the enemy MT-25, and that bounced. That's right, the MT-25 doesn't have much armor, but this gun is decidedly not good, and I just bounced on him. Managed to put one shot into him, though. And hopefully the tank destroyers are just going to open up on him as he moves around from behind that rock. VK 3001P has terrible armor, and we pick up a kill on him for kill number 1. So we're just trying to be a little opportunistic here and take advantage of bad guys in bad situations if we can. As I say, there's really not much spotting you can do in this thing on this map. Not that I'm aware of anyway. If you guys have got great spotting locations or ways that you make light tanks work on this map, please feel free to tell me. I don't. There's the MT-25 from earlier on. He is most likely making a beeline for our artillery, and so I am going to move forward to try and intercept him and keep our artillery in the game. AMX is running away because he's fast enough to do so. SU-14-2, however, is not fast enough to run away, and he's having none of this MT-25 shenanigans. And just rams the light tank to death. Alas, the enemy artillery polishes him off, but I'm still tempted to say that was totally worth it. That was a great move from our SU. Looking after himself, and I imagine he threw a track doing so. I would say he probably should have used a repair kit on the track that he threw and then moved, because enemy artillery was almost inevitably going to be aiming at that spot. At the moment, all I'm doing is just driving around, just keeping an eye on the minimap, waiting for things to develop, seeing if I can do anything. Scoreline is 4 kills apiece. And there's a T-32. If he can get into a hull down location, that T-71 and T-69 could be in trouble. And time to relocate again. So this is a bit of a risk, but I'm bored and I'm not doing anything for my team, so I consider that it's worth it. I'm hoping they don't have any surprise ambushes around here, and I'm going to try and come up behind that T-32 and poke him in the backside. Now there's also a T-37 over here, which we need to be a little careful of, and I'm hoping that our T-71 and T-69 are going to take the hint and give me a hand here, or I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. Put one shot into the T-32 and then back off, and then I decide to get out of there. The T-69 and the T-71 aren't moving. They're not taking advantage of the distraction. There's no point me staying there. I'm not going to achieve anything. Our Jackson, however, has come down to try and help out, which is a little bit problematic, because without that T-69 and T-71 moving, we just die, and the T-69 on the enemy team turns up and that Jackson's dead. And so I am just getting out of dodge. T-69 and T-71 are still just sitting up there, letting people die. Sorry, but that's terrible play from those guys. Anyway, I'm running away like the brave Sir Robin that I am. I tried to do my bit of teamwork to help those guys out. They didn't take advantage. Now they're probably going to die for it. Ugh, 7-8. Not looking so good. I mean, I'm not going to say we've had a fantastic game yet, because we clearly haven't. But it's very difficult to know what to do on this map. What you can, however, see is that I've spent an awful lot of time driving around, exercising the engine, and I'm getting around quickly. So we've gone back, we went down there to have a look at that T-32, didn't work out, we ran away, we saw the threat coming in time and just legged it. So what now? Well, there's a Tiger II coming up from the beach. I can't engage him frontally, but I might be able to get around his sides and rear, depending on how many friends he has. and try and apply a bit of a friendly hug. There's also their artillery. The FV-304 has been spotted at F2. Did I just manage to throw a track? Or am I just sitting here? No, I think despite the game's lack of telling me this, I'm pretty sure I threw a track when I did that. Anyway, trying to come up behind this Tiger 2. T-28 prototype is engaging him from the front. And I'm just trying to plough shots into his side and rear. T-28 prototype finishes him off. Scoreline is 9-9. Going to where that FV was last spotted and hoping he doesn't have many friends over there. T-71 and T-69 are both now dead. There's the FV-304. There's me and a T-25-2 going after him. This FV is probably screwed. I hope he's screwed, because otherwise it doesn't bode well for me. Takes a shot at the T-25-2, but it doesn't look like he hits. One shot into him. T-25-2 almost hits me. This guy's not doing particularly well. Oh my lord, I managed to miss him because gun depression. I take a shot to the rear that only seems to damage my tracks, kill the FV, and run away making noises like Dr. Zoidberg. T-25-2 though is getting worked over, and he's dead. That Cheeto, who has been camping there for a little while now, polishes the guy off. So, there's me, T-28 prototype and 2 artillery, versus T-32, Jagdtiger 88, Cheeto, and artillery. There's the T-32. Remember him from earlier on? Yeah. Jagdtiger and Cheeto were both spotted, last spotted around G6, G7. And then of course there's enemy artillery, so what we're trying to do is go for this T-32. Alas, we're a little out of position to really do it now because we have to go uphill, and apparently we got spotted on, we got stuck on random pieces of terrain. Our AMX is probably dead, there we go, but T-28 prototype and me, hopefully. Oh god, there's a Jagdtiger as well. Well, this blows. And the T-28 prot just missed his shot. Oh dear. And Jagdtiger takes out our artillery. Right, okay, screw this. Jumanji! One shot into the Jagdtiger. 2 shots in. 3. That one bounces. That one misses. That one doesn't hit. That one goes in. So does that one, and we run away. We want to give this T-28 prototype some help. That's more important than just dueling with that Jagdtiger right now. T-32 looks at me, misses me. I miss my shot. And while he's distracted, the T-32, sorry, the T-28 prototype kills the T-32. So that's evened the scoreline up just a little bit. I know where the Jagdtiger was last spotted, so I'm just going to try and find him. And I'm hoping he's going to move forward to engage our T-28 prototype, and I'm hoping that I get to come up behind him. But I'm being a little cautious. Oh, wait, there he is. Oh, jeez. Okay. Oh, Jagdtiger's on 16 health, but he kills our T-28 prototype. Alright. He didn't go where I thought he was going to go. So, loading a round of APCR. Why am I doing that? Because APCR has like 190 pen with this gun, and I might have to shoot at his front. And if I have to shoot at his front, I need APCR to take him out. As it is, I get to shoot him in the side and manage to kill him. Back to armor piercing. There's the Cheeto from earlier on. AMX is saying, go kill him too. Well, yeah, that is the general idea, mate. And, whoops, into a wreck. Cheeto decides to come forward, which is a terrible idea. He has the advantage at range. I have the advantage up close and personal. And I'm going to take a lot of damage here. Not much I can do about it. But yes, the enemy artillery did just team kill his own Cheeto. Oh dear. Alright, so that just leaves me and the enemy artillery. And our AMX is spamming large areas of the map. So, I am going to approach from the beach. Why am I approaching from the beach? Because I very much doubt that the artillery is going to be expecting me to do that. It's not a direction that I was last spotted in or anything. You know. To be fair to the artillery, in that situation, his Cheeto friend was basically dead. The way he'd played. So I don't want to be too harsh to that M40, M43 driver. He took a risky shot, it's true. But with the Cheeto did not play very well. And so I was probably going to kill the Cheeto anyway. And so team killing him didn't actually make much difference, and it did come with the possible benefit of taking me out. So I don't actually want to be too harsh to the enemy artillery driver. That shot wasn't necessarily as poorly thought out as it might first appear. Now, we are of course running out of time a little bit. There's only 3 minutes of this game left. But this is a fast machine, you know. Someone saying you were lucky hitting my side. Well, I'd loaded APCR specifically so that I'd be able to penetrate your front anyway. You know, I had prepared for this eventuality. Basically, I'm just trying to minimise the amount of luck I have to make the situation work. And of course, he says I was lucky to shoot him in the side. Our artillery promptly informs him that, you know, he thinks I prefer the ass because, you know, I'm a light tank, why wouldn't I? So, ooh, that could have been very nasty. The M40, M43 fires, misses me. I think he's now going to try and ram me to death. There's nothing else he can really do. I actually bounced on him with that shot because artillery armor's overpowered, clearly, and we managed to pick him off and pick up the kill, sealing off the game with just under 2 minutes remaining. So I didn't do any swatting damage that game. I don't think I got a single point of assistance damage, but we did about 2,000 regular damage, which, considering the gun hits for about 80, isn't too shabby. Take a look as well at the distance that I drove that game, because it really was a case of driving all over the map all of the time. And then we'll just jump back into the garage after you've had a look at the post-battle results. So what do I think of this overall? Well, I hinted at this a little bit earlier. I found this a very hard tank to like when I first started playing it. I ended up playing quite a few games in it eventually because I decided to sort of grind it, if you will. I'll bring up my statistics again. I played 138 games in it, got a 55% win rate overall, I got my ace tanker, damage ratio less than 1. My survival rate in this tank is not particularly good. You tend to die a lot, I found anyway. Spotted on average 2.5 vehicles per game. Destroyed half a vehicle per game. Maximum experience 1264. Max damage per battle 2011. Max destroyed per battle 4. And awards, and you can see battle heroes 3 scout medals. Spotter stuff. Billot's medal, which was lucky as sin. You get that for destroying at least 2 enemy vehicles while having 5 different modules damaged or crew members injured and losing 80% of your hit points. Never had that medal before, ever. I've only got one of them, and it's a friggin' light tank, for crying out loud. I don't understand how that works. I remember the game, it was on Sam River. I went up to do some spotting. Suddenly I got shot by a lot of things and I ran the hell away. I think quite a lot of those hits went into my tracks and I got very lucky. And an Orlix medal for killing tanks that are higher tier than you. So I haven't done badly in this tank. I mean, as I mentioned earlier on, the 2 marks of excellence. But it did take a lot of getting used to, because it is such a dedicated scout. And that means that it's very team reliant. If your team completely sucks, you're going to struggle to make much difference to the game. Now that's kind of true of most light tanks, or all light tanks. They tend to have a very high skill cap, i.e., you know, if you're really good, you can do wondrous things in them. But for us mere mortals, they're going to be a right pain in the backside. But it's even more... and also you're going to be very team reliant, because a light tank is often one of the machines that's doing that spotting, that's trying to light up the enemy team, gain intel for your team, and if your team don't use that intelligence, then, well, there isn't really much you can do about that. You know, lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, and we all know the caliber of your typical World of Tanks player, so, you are very team reliant in this thing. You want to have a good team, and like all tanks, sometimes your scouting can backfire. You go into a great position, you light up half of the enemy team, and your guys, instead of getting into a good position for themselves, sit in their own cap circle, taking pot shots at the enemy while the enemy encircles them and wrecks them. So it can be very frustrating to play. But, and there is a but throughout all this, despite the frustration and despite the fact that you're very team reliant, I did eventually actually have fun driving this thing. It is very, very, very fast, and that's really the selling point of it. The gun is kind of puny. It's big, it's fat, it's ugly, it doesn't have any gun depression, it's a hard tank to like, but I don't know, it had a certain charm to it. Now, I never played the T50-2. I don't have I guess the bias that comes from having played that previous machine and seeing what it was replaced by. And certainly this thing has been buffed since it was introduced. But I did eventually have fun in it. Am I keeping it? Good God, no. Not a chance. Why am I not keeping it if I said I had fun in it? Well, kind of two reasons. Firstly, as I mentioned, you are so incredibly team reliant. I guess three reasons. You're very, very team reliant. More so than I like to be, even in light tanks. Secondly, the main selling point of this machine, much like the Panzer 1C, the main selling point of this thing is that it's fast. If I wanted to play a racing game, I would go and play a racing game. I'm playing a game with tanks. And thirdly, because I already own and I'm already keeping the T-21, I have the Type 64, both of which are Tier 6 light tanks that I have a lot of fun in, and if you gave me the option, that I would much prefer to play over the MT-25, so I'm not keeping it. Is it a completely awful machine? No. And it has a place, it has a niche among the Tier 6 light tanks. As that sort of dedicated scout. Arguably a niche that's kind of shared with the 5916, but I haven't played that in a while, so I don't really want to make much of a comparison. A lot of people really dislike this thing. I don't think it's as painful as many people would have you believe. You know, I think it's actually better than that. But I'm not going to be keeping it, and I am just going to be taking the crew out of it and moving them up into the LTDB when I eventually get that thing unlocked. That looks like a lot of fun. But I could be wrong, who knows. Anyway, that's it. They're my thoughts on the machine. I hope you guys... Oh, also, I should probably mention, this is the tank that I eventually did Light Tank Mission 15 for the Stugin. And that was on a map that people don't usually think of when they think of great light tank maps. So I will be showing you that at some point. Not just yet, but at some point I will be showing you guys that. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that review, possibly even found it vaguely informative. Maybe it was a help for you guys if you decide to buy this machine and give it a go. Perhaps you've already played it and you decided it was garbage. Maybe this will make you revisit it. Maybe it won't. That's entirely up to you. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you possibly even found it vaguely informative. If you did any of the above, feel free to catch some of my other videos, including reviews, and or subscribe to the channel. And as ever, I wish you very happy hunting on that battlefield. Ciao, ciao.